My parents embarrassed me at my sister's graduation, saying I was a mistake. Can you imagine being openly humiliated by your own parents at your sister's graduation? That day, they didn't just crack a few bad jokes. They shattered my world, declaring me an utter mistake, a burden compared to their perfect golden child. The shame was absolute. My own parents, denigrating me in front of everyone, our closest friends, our family, at an event that was supposed to be solely about Elena, my older sister. She was so excited, ready to start her new life after college, with an amazing job already lined up. When my parents stood up to speak, I expected the usual, appropriate remarks. Elena had worked incredibly hard, and she deserved all the credit. I wasn't surprised when they included her as one of their greatest blessings. I was old enough to know by then that they adored Elena more than they loved me. She was always the more gifted daughter, and I was constantly compared to her. But then, their speech took a dark turn. They started to joke, casually, chillingly, about how they should have stopped having children after Elena. They argued that second-borns are usually useless. They said if they'd only had Elena, they could have spent more time and effort on her instead of me. Hearing those awful words, openly and casually, while I sat right there, stunned me into silence. I searched the room, desperately hoping someone, anyone, would notice how disturbing their statements were. But all I saw were the faces of my relatives, laughing along as if this horrible comparison were just light entertainment. Though my parents had often made me feel inferior, this was the first time they'd done it so publicly, leaving me nowhere to hide from the devastating truth. In their eyes, I simply lacked. I was a distant afterglow, while Elena would always be the daughter they adored. This wasn't an isolated incident, no moment of poor judgment. It was confirmation of what I'd always suspected. Growing up as the second child, I became accustomed to our household's implied preference. It crept into their speech, their conduct, their daily routines. My parents frequently forgot my birthday, and more than once they were on business trips, leaving me alone. They would never miss Elena's moment. Every year, without fail, both of them would be there, planning a spectacular event, ensuring she felt honored. Seeing how they showered her with love taught me early on to manage my expectations, to accept that my birthday just wasn't that important to them. As an opinionated youngster, they regularly told me I was disruptive or unpleasant, simply for being myself. I was labeled problematic because I didn't fit the quiet, restrained mold they seemed to prefer, punished for something as simple as being too chatty or honest. Elena's calm temperament and introverted tendencies, on the other hand, were constantly lauded. She was the ideal daughter, mature and polite, always the one displayed and paraded in front of everyone. Over the years, I received the most criticism. For a while, I tried to suit the picture my parents wanted. I put in the effort, truly believing that if I acted better, accomplished more, or followed their plan, they would eventually see me differently. But as I grew older, it became clear. I couldn't shape myself into Elena's clone. We were two separate people. I tried so hard, but I couldn't be her. I eventually gave up, attempting to adjust to their constant adoration of her, the way they would brag about her accomplishments to anyone who would listen, while dismissing everything I had ever done. Still, it hurt terribly. All those occurrences, as devastating as they were, had at least remained within our household. I was absolutely amazed at how casually they exposed everything at the graduation ceremony. They had never embarrassed me like this in front of others. They had never shown the rest of the family how little respect they had for me. What hurt even more was that no one, not a single person in my entire family, showed displeasure or told my parents how inappropriate this was. Nobody even glanced sympathetically at me after those jokes were made at my expense. My parents continued to laud Elena, their tones conveying a sense of pride I had never seen directed at me. Then they brazenly announced her graduation present, a brand new automobile, which she had always wanted. The room erupted in applause, laughter, and clapping, everyone's attention fixed on Elena, who hugged my parents with love and gratitude. The three of them looked so genuinely content. I felt like an outsider in my own family. The funny thing is, I've never been envious of Elena. We'd always gotten along well enough, and I believed she deserved whatever good fortune came her way. But that speech broke me. The truth is, after that awful speech, I truly addressed my parents for the first time in years. I had silently endured their favoritism, their scorn, their unpleasant words. I took it all in, convincing myself that if I just tried to be strong and calm, instead of irritated, things would get better. But that evening, after their public joke, I had reached a breaking point. I was tired of taking everything in, tired of pretending their comments didn't sting anymore. I resolved that I could no longer remain silent. I mustered the courage to speak up, hoping they would see how deeply their act had hurt me. I wanted them to at least show they cared enough to listen. I wanted them to recognize the misery they had caused over the years and accept the embarrassment I felt in that moment. If I told them how I felt, I figured they'd regret what they said, or at least feel awful about making me appear so little. When I finally confronted them, I received a cold, scornful response. They paid little attention to my words. Rather than sorrow or an apology, they told me I was exaggerating, as if years of being ignored and denigrated could be so easily dismissed. They acted as if I had no right to be furious with them, as if my feelings didn't matter. My father went so far as to remark that he had nothing to be proud of when it came to me, and that I shouldn't hold it against them if they were disappointed with who I was. I recall how casually he stated it, as if my very presence didn't matter to him. My mother, on the other hand, told me to stop overreacting and pointed out that I was being overly needy for being upset over something so insignificant. It felt as if my parents were saying I hadn't earned the basic respect of being their child because I hadn't done enough, that I was somehow less deserving of their pride or care than Elena, simply because I wasn't her. The matter even resurfaced to Elena, who defended my parents and demanded that I be less harsh with them. She said something that truly hit home, and I'll never forget it. I shouldn't have been so outraged by their graduation speech because it was merely a harmless jest. Elena assured me that if I had studied and worked hard like she did, I could make them proud as well. Among all the words, those struck the most deeply. It was dreadful to learn I hadn't worked hard enough to earn their respect. She made it sound so simple, as if all the years of effort I had put in were invisible to her, as if my difficulties and attempts to get a job had no bearing. As the older sister, I expected her to protect me in some way, but she didn't. That felt like an ultimate betrayal coming from her. Looking back, that conversation turned everything around. I realized then that I was done. Done trying to win their approval. Done clarifying for them. Done hoping for something that would never come, love or affirmation. I poured all my energy into making something for myself. Starting that day, I immersed myself in my studies, focusing on the things I could influence and create for my own destiny. 2 years later, all my hard work paid off when I was accepted on a full scholarship to my dream institution. This was a purely personal accomplishment for me, entirely my own, the result of my dedication, determination, and refusal to let my family's neglect define me. When I gave my parents the news, they were almost as astonished as if they had never expected me to attend college in the first place, let alone on a scholarship. Elena scrutinized my admission letter twice, as if she didn't believe I was capable of doing things on my own. Clearly, they had all underestimated me, and watching their surprise made me feel a slight thrill. I just shook my head at her remark. But my mother then turned my mood sour by saying that it was a good thing I had received a full scholarship, because they hadn't set aside any college funds for me anyhow. My parents had no issue paying Elena's tuition. When it was time to move out, I simply packed my belongings and left the house for my college apartment. That day, I made a determined decision to cut off all contact with Elena and my parents. I felt no need to explain my intentions. They had consistently demonstrated, after all, that my feelings, opinions, and values had little influence on them. Why should I exhaust myself trying to explain something they had shown themselves unable to acknowledge? Since they hadn't even provided an apology that might restore the years of neglect and agony they had caused me, I recognized that arguing with them was pointless. My family contacted me frequently over the next few weeks and months, sending emails and messages. I initially felt compelled to open them. However, each message served as a sour reminder of who they were. Their communications were filled with attempts to mislead me into believing I was the one acting erratically, instead of accepting responsibility for the years of mental pain they had caused. They believed I had overreacted, dismissing my decision to end relationships as immature and impulsive. Their statements consistently returned to the underlying truth. I was the one dissolving the family, so I was wrong to cut them off. I never bothered to respond to any of them. So far, my college experience has been quite positive. I've been able to devote my full attention to my studies, hobbies, and most importantly, connections with people who love and see me for who I am. Working part-time at a neighboring diner has helped me save for the future. Meeting new people and talking about their lives is always interesting. I've cut off contact with my family and immersed myself in my studies, social life, and everything my new surroundings have to offer. By filling my days with important events, I haven't missed them or wondered about how they are doing. By the way, if you're still with me, make sure to hit subscribe. More unbelievable stories are coming. Yesterday, I received an unexpected email from my parents. I found it truly shocking. They had stopped writing to me long ago because I had never answered any of their previous communications. In this email, my parents encouraged me to contact them soon, as they had some bad news to tell me. Still, despite everything, my chest tightened. Years of hurt and rejection could not erase the nagging feeling that something terrible had occurred. My heart started racing, and all I could think about was the possibility that a family member had been seriously ill, or worse, perished. Despite my resolution to keep them at a distance, fear crept in, my heart hammering as I braced myself for whatever news they were about to bring. I grabbed my phone, unblocked them, and called them immediately back. The news my parents wanted to share with me was troubling. Elena, my perfect sister, was going through a difficult personal situation. They stated that she had been dealing with drug addiction, which had severely impacted her life. Her addiction had gotten so bad that she had lost her job, spent her savings, and was now left with no resources or options. I had no idea Elena was going through anything like this, so the news completely surprised me. She had always been my dependable, high-achieving sibling. Yet, that same sister had become addicted to drugs. I found it tough to believe. Elena's addiction was so unbelievable in my parents' eyes that it shattered their perception of her. Their incredulity, desperation, and most importantly, their tremendous concern about how this would affect their reputation if others found out, shocked me. They hoped I'd have some answers for them. Elena had always appeared to be grounded and responsible, so it was startling that she, of all people, had fallen victim to something as dangerous as heroin addiction. My father then asked me in a mistrustful tone, "You didn't introduce her to drugs back then, did you?" The implication surprised and disgusted me. Not only was the idea completely absurd, but how could they possibly assume I had anything to do with Elena's troubles, much alone anything as serious as introducing her to drugs? I mean, I never do drugs myself. Furthermore, I hadn't spoken with Elena or the rest of my family in years due to their mistreatment of me. Having been removed from their life, I had focused on carving my own path away from their toxicity. In the face of their immaculate image of Elena breaking, they were quick to point fingers at someone else, and I was clearly the easiest target. I advised them to speak with Elena before making any assumptions, and I told them that they were unwise to even suspect me. Throughout our conversation, I noticed that my parents were more concerned with the shame that would befall the family if Elena's admissions were public, rather than expressing concern for her. My mother appeared fascinated with her immaculate daughter's clandestine actions. She kept talking about how unexpected it was to discover this aspect of Elena, and how others would respond if they ever found out. Elena and Dad were overwhelmed and unprepared to deal with the situation, so my mother begged me to return home so I could assist them in caring for Elena. My mother implored me. "I mean, what do we even do? I feel so ashamed of her, so maybe you can talk to her for us?" As if this were a legitimate demand to make after years of not communicating. "I can't help Elena. She needs professional help," I stated bluntly. I emphasized that if they truly cared about her well-being and wanted to help her recover, the finest and most compassionate thing they could do was to admit her to a treatment facility where trained specialists could assist her. But my father immediately rejected the idea of sending her to rehab, nearly trembling at the thought of their family's good name being tarnished by her admission to a treatment center. He was obsessed with the possibility of their reputation being harmed by sending her to such a location. He claimed it would only serve to damage their reputation. The thought of people knowing that their only accomplished daughter had a sickness as serious as heroin addiction horrified him. My father chided me for even considering this option, as if openly admitting her addiction was more shameful, and as if constant surveillance would magically fix the problem. Dad insisted that I return home and that the three of us work together to care for Elena, putting her under constant observation to prevent a relapse. He kept saying how much they wanted Elena to feel better and get back to her normal life as soon as possible. Their perspective was that everything would return to normal as long as no one else knew. They wanted me to take part in a charade, pretending everything was okay while keeping her issues hidden from everyone else. I got outraged and incredulous as I listened. Why were my parents so concerned with what others thought about them and their reputation? Here was an opportunity for my parents to truly stand up, to demonstrate that they could prioritize their daughter's needs over appearances and transform her life. My sister was plainly suffering from something serious, yet they still struggled to do the proper thing. These people had not altered all that much, obviously. On top of that, they were now attempting to entice me back in, urging me to maintain this family front by assisting them in caring for the sister they frequently likened me to. I claimed I needed some time to think about things. I can't just walk away, after all. I have classes and a job to consider. My parents insisted that I take at least 2 or 3 weeks off to help them, because they really needed me right now. I'm torn about everything. Part of me wants to see what I can do for Elena, to make sure she's okay. Another side of me is selfish, allowing my parents to manage their golden child fully on their own. I'm not sure I can be of much help because they are more concerned with saving face than with addressing the root of the problem. Even today, I wonder if I should refuse to return home and care for my drug-addicted sister. Update 1. This story didn't appear like it was going to explode. It is taking some time to look through the hundreds of comments I have received. I wanted to clear up a few things. I don't hate Elena. Actually, I want to help her and genuinely care about her. However, because I have not spoken with my family in 3 years, I have experienced a level of serenity and stability that I did not have previously. I am concerned that reconnecting with Elena may allow my parents to re-enter my life as well. I honestly do not know for sure. If you're wondering, Elena could have been fighting with heroin addiction for years, possibly even before my parents discovered it. Clearly, Elena, the golden child, was praised and kept as the ideal daughter, frequently under intense pressure to maintain that image. This form of pedestal minimizes susceptibility and failure. Any failure, no matter how little, could have been devastating if Elena believed her worth was solely determined by her accomplishments and how others perceived her. Drugs could have developed over time as a coping mechanism for escaping the weight of those expectations or the fear of disappointing our parents. I become even more depressed when I think about my sister, who may have been suffering silently all along without my knowledge. She should have felt comfortable being honest with me earlier, before things got to this point. I would have wanted to be there for her, to help her get through it. It just makes me feel powerless. If only I had known about this significant part of her life and could have helped her. My parents expected the best of me and my sister from an early age because they are both high achievers. Personally, I need some time to analyze everything. I will notify you if anything further develops. Update 2. After considerable internal thought and encouragement from some of the comments I read, I decided to contact Elena. She is my sister, despite everything. As a result, I believed it was critical to hear from her directly, rather than basing my decisions on my parents' interpretations of events. First, I texted her a short note asking if she wanted to chat. She responded some hours later, but only agreed to a phone call. When I finally spoke with her, the voice on the other end of the telephone seemed like a shadow of the sister I knew. Elena's tone was obviously weighted, softer, and more careful. She slowly revealed what she was going through. Elena stated that she had fought with addiction for several years. It began shortly after college when she began working for her law business. She struggled to maintain that status at work by continually working harder than others to impress her supervisor in the hopes of receiving more credit or a promotion. She began to feel burned out after being the perfect, highly talented daughter for so long. Elena felt she couldn't stop, slow down, or get treatment because she had to live up to the expectations everyone had for her. When stress got unbearable, a friend recommended using recreational drugs to unwind. Before she knew it, what began as intermittent use had become into reliance. Elena also stated that she felt imprisoned for the longest time. She couldn't tell her parents she was struggling since she knew how they would react. She felt alone due to their obsessive attention to appearances and denial of anything that contradicted their narrative. She maintained the facade, acting as if everything was fine, even as she began to lose control. She couldn't hide the fact any longer, so she spiraled, lost her job, and depleted her savings. She wondered whether I was criticizing her as harshly as she was analyzing herself, and she expressed her embarrassment for even discussing this with me. It hurt my heart to hear her story. I'd never realized that the platform our parents had set her on was a prison rather than a privilege. She had been bearing the suffocating weight of being their golden child, whereas I had been dealing with the pain of being overlooked. Our parents' focus on control and favoritism had harmed each of us in different ways. There was no way I would have judged her. As a result, I expressed my regret that she had not communicated her feelings with me. My only regret is that I was not with her. It's a lot to process, isn't it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. What would you have done in my shoes? Or have you ever felt the crushing weight of family expectations like this?